All right, so welcome everybody. My name is Kelly Kulzer-Reyes. I'm a self-determination program trainer with Disability Voices United. And here's my daughter, Amelia, who's a self-determination program participant. Thank you, Tim. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tim, and I am the Assistant Director of Communication Rights at Disability Voices United, and I am going to start my second year of SDP next month.
And today we're going to be talking with you about how to create that spending plan together. And just for the good of the order, could everybody who's here, assuming you know how to use your reactions, could you just let us know with your reactions, thumbs up? You know a little bit about self-determination spending plans. Give me a little thumbs up for that. There we go. Great. How about a heart if you just really want to know, but you're still early days? Give me a heart for that. Good. Thank you so much.
Oh.
Yeah, that helps us a lot. No, and we're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. So when you have questions, we want to make sure that you have a chance to ask them. Okay, so that's what we have there. And then actually, if you do think you need interpretation in Spanish, si usted cree que usted va a necesitar interpretación en español, me puede hacer el favor de hacer reaction con la que está riéndose mucho. Hay gente que no me puede hacer este favorcito. Hay gente que necesita interpretación. Parece que maybe we're doing okay without an interpreter. Kira, I'm not sure, but thanks for sticking around to move her because I don't know how to do that. I'm not powerful like Kira. All right, let's get started, everybody. Thanks for letting us know where you are in the self-determination spending plan process. We appreciate that. We have a few of the housekeeping items. I'd like to make sure everybody knows that you have a self-determination local volunteer advisory committee, and they have a page on the North LA's Regional Center's website. And this link will get you there. So you can go to their meetings, you can join them, you can volunteer to be part of that committee. You can do all of those things. And it's really, really important that we all get involved to make sure the self-determination for North LA clients is the best that it could possibly be. And then we also are having a resource fair for North LA families and participants in the self-determination program. That resource fair will be the 19th. I guess that's our number 2 here, right? The 19th from 11 to 1:30 at the main office. And that information is right there with the location. And thank you to Kira for making that fabulous flyer for us. Next week at the same time here, we're going to be having a panel of FMS representatives answering our questions about the financial management services. That's what FMS stands for. And remember, that's the one thing you have to have as a vendored service in your self-determination program. And hopefully they'll be very helpful and give you lots of good information. All right, let's get started about spending plans. And some of this for many of you is going to be basic and background information, but we want to make sure everybody has the same starting place so that we can all have the same vocabulary when we're talking about the spending plan. So the spending plan is a plan that details how you want the money in your self-determination program spent in order to meet your goals. And those goals are from your person-centered planning process, and they're in your IPP. So basically, you're going to have your person-centered plan first. That leads to the creation of your goals that are included in your IPP. And those goals are how you're basing your services, activities, and items that you're going to purchase with your self-determination funds to meet those goals. And remember, without a goal, there's nothing, you're not buying anything, you're not purchasing like human labor for anything, you're not doing anything unless you have a goal connected to it. All right, so we've got that person-centered plan. and it will contain outcomes, and it will and it won't relate to your disability, right? So it's your outcomes, it's your goals. What do you want to be doing with your life? It will contain goals that cost money and some that don't. Those goals that don't can be either funded with generic resources. Those generic resources are things like, maybe you have a faith community and there's a group that gets together every week and you want to be part of that group. That might not cost anything. And maybe you need to have staff go with you for that. So that's in a way that the goal might not cost something, but you can definitely still include that in your planning process. You can look at long-term goals and not just the next year. So my background is education. We always look for we plan with the end in mind. Where do we want to be 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now? And then we build the steps backwards so that you can get to that goal. So maybe this year in your spending plan, those goals do one step towards that bigger goal. All right, and it covers only the subjects you want it to cover. That's what your person-centered plan does. And those decisions are yours. They're not mine. Like, I don't get to make the decisions for my daughter. Those of us who are parents don't get to make the decisions for our kids or our adults who are our offspring. We still need to make sure that all of those individuals are making decisions for themselves. It is not my plan. It is my daughter is going to come and bug us right now. Not right now, sweetie. All right. Now, the difference here is you're talking about the individual program plan. No password. Out. Go. Sorry, everyone. Will only contain outcomes that relate to your disability in your individual program plan. Okay. So that contains goals that cost money and they need services. Oops. They cover goals that are just for the next year. They're not like that forward thinking, planning ahead kind of thing. They're, what do we want to do this year? So that's a big difference between those two. And it covers subjects that you may not want to talk about. Not everybody likes to talk about deficit model or things that are difficult for them. Sometimes they have different goals and outcomes there. The IPP team usually includes your regional center who can deny services. Now remember that regional that's like in that traditional model, right? So the denial of services does happen, and then people have to provide you with a notice of proposed action, right? That NOA or NOPA, depending on which regional center you're with. So those are all like traditional system things, and that's not how the spending plan works. All right, Tim, did you have anything you want to add right now? It seems like you're no, not yet, or you are not yet. Okay, thank you. All right, so your spending plan cannot allocate more money than you have available. So it can't be more than your individual budget amount. Okay, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. Services, activities, and items in your spending plan must only relate to your IPP goals or your disability. Your services, activities, and items must be part of the waiver. There's a list of these services and that the federal government will fund. And if they won't fund, like if it's something that they say they cannot fund, you're not going to get that in your spend. It's not going to be part of the accepted spending plan. And you always must use generic resources before allocating any of the spending plan funds. If there's a generic resource, you must use that first. And then, but this isn't a big one. All the services must meet the home and community based services settings rule. That means those have to be acceptable, like there have to be resources available in the community. It can't be a segregated setting. It can't be something that where you have no choice or autonomy. It has to be something that's integrated into the community. Now, waiver services are those things that are going to be approved by the federal government, right? So services, activities, and items must be part of the waiver, which is that magical list. And actually, there are some directives from DDS about this, and we can share the, make sure you know where those lists are. There are 26 pages of services and descriptions. So when you get the services and descriptions page from DDS, all the definitions are there for you. It includes what can be covered. And then when that was confusing, the Department of Developmental Services added directives to further clarify what could be, how to use those different definitions. Community integration services is a big one. That's to make sure that we can all be in the community. And then participant directed goods and services is another important service code. For those of you who don't have that number memorized, that one, the first community integration services 331, and participant directed goods and services is 333. There is a program directives. We were just mentioning this program directives page on the DDS website, where you can find more detailed information that is more recent than the original self-determination information that came out, a couple of years ago when we were starting the program. Now everybody sends in notes and says, I don't understand, like, we don't understand how to do this. Or the regional center says, we don't know what to do with this. Everyone's trying to do surf lessons and we don't do that. And these directives have helped the independent facilitators, the financial management services, the participants, the regional center staff all understand and kind of have a common understanding of the rules and make sure that we're all following them together. Go ahead, Tim.
One of my goals for next year is to take cooking classes so I can socialize more. Even though my regional center denied me social rec, it's still in my PCP and IPP. Instead of using my budget to take cooking classes, I have a few friends who are in the restaurant business, and they are going to help me take cooking classes at their restaurants, and it's not going to cost me anything.
I think that's a perfect example of the community integration, the making that generic resource, meeting your goal, and saving yourself funds. I mean, all of those, that's a perfect example of how to make all those things work together. Thank you so much. That's a great example. So this is a bunch of text about directives, okay? And since you have access to the whole PowerPoint in the chat, if you came in late, we can probably post it again. I don't think it will stick in there for the people who came in late. But for the participant directed goods and services, this is the language that they created to make it a little bit better, we hope. So before including any service or good in the individual budget or SDP plan, the planning team must first be clear about how the good or service addresses an identified need or goal. That goes for everything, right? Enclosure A, which is on that directives page, and you go back in there. This is, I don't know how we're getting green lines on there. Tim, are you doing that? You're so powerful. Not sure.
No.
Not you, not me, maybe Kira. Not sure how that's happening. So there we've got the explanation of how to make sure we've got those. Oh, Amelia. The different participant directed goods and services in the plan. And so we've got these things have to be approved in the federal Medicare and Medicaid services, right? Waiver. If they're not approved by Medicare and Medicaid services, you can't use them. But that enclosure B inside of the January 2022 directive is extremely helpful. It tells you exactly what you can use it on and it tells you exactly what you can't use it on. So if it's not in the can't use it on, you can probably find a way to make sure your goal matches the thing that you're trying to purchase. If it doesn't match your goals, we shouldn't be using it on those things anyway. If your goal is to learn how to cook or be out in the community, there are lots of ways to meet those goals. One of them would be to create that yourself. create it with that participant directed goods and services. Although I think there's a pretty big argument for community integration on that one, and everything depends on how you write your goals, right? So in some cases, consumers may require additional goods and services outside what is funded in the individual budget to support their IPP. Enclosure B, that's a big one, is really important, and enclosure C is helpful for that stuff too. So determining the service designation, there's a whole flow chart that we can use, and I think it's on our next page. I'm going to clear this page. I don't know how we got this up here, but I'm going to see if I can clear it. There we go. All right, so we've got our participant directed goods and services. Apparently, I'm also making messes here. Here, I'll drop these. There we go. All right, so that particular web decision tree will help you decide if you can use the participant directed goods and services code to do this. All right, so the IPP team meets to discuss needs or goals. And then you find out, is it in the identified goals of the IPP? If yes, you go this direction. If no, you go that direction, right? So will the good or service link directly to an identified IPP goal? No, then assist consumer to find another or seek another funding source. Is the good or service included in another service definition? Yes. So then you've got all this yes and no information. If you're an independent facilitator, you can use this with your clients. If you are a family creating your own spending plan, if you're a participant creating your own spending plan, you can use this decision tree to figure out if this is the way to use the participant directed goods and services. It's really, really important that we are using, this basic code 333, they're trying to use it as little as possible. It's a lot harder to, I guess, explain to when they're all concerned about audits. I'm concerned about meeting goals. We all have different roles. That's okay. But this is a really helpful tool when you're trying to decide if this is something that you can fund for in the 333 category. Okay. All right. So then there are services that aren't covered by the waiver, and you should not be using those services, putting those anywhere, right? Rent and mortgage, nope. Food, nope. Purchase or lease of cars or vehicles and general maintenance, nope. General home improvement or not related to a disability, and then maybe they'll add more of these in the future. This is where we're at right now. Let's see here. You must use generic resources before allocating any money in the spending plan. So if you've got private health insurance, it's still going to be used first. If you're still in the school system, you're going to use your school district for some things first, right? Department of Rehabilitation, DOR, might have, if it's an employment project, contact your DOR person and see if you can get those funds allocated from the Department of Rehabilitation. And then IHSS is a generic resource. Now we need to remember that IHSS is to perform tasks, right? And then for somebody, so that because they either can't do them themselves or they struggle to do them themselves, and that's what IHSS is for. Oftentimes in the self-determination program, you're looking at learning how to complete a certain task or improving skills, either adaptive skills or independent living skills. Those are different goals. So you need to make sure it's really clear in your spending plan and your person-centered plan what your goals are so that you can use the funds and that make sure that if you need to fund something, the generic resource is understood correctly. All right, so we've got the HCBS settings rule, one of the most exciting settings rules ever. So the new rules say that people with disabilities should be part of their communities and not segregated or separated in a separate space. Services can be received at your home or in the general community. And then community means spending most of the time you are getting services around non-disabled people who are not paid to be with you, right? So people who, but it's also about choice and autonomy. So let's make sure we're looking at that broadly, and hopefully at some point, maybe North LA has already done trainings on these kinds of services, or maybe they're looking forward to doing those in the future. But there's a settings rule. If you choose a service or a setting that needs to have an assessment done, you can do that. And it's not a complicated process. And it's something that everybody should be familiar with. Because if you're using a service, you need to make sure that they are complying with that HCBS settings rule now, because self-determination requires that settings rule in place today. Not, in the future, not in March 2023. It's now for self-determination. So here are some examples. Segregated would be like your group home setting, but in the community would be at home with family or an apartment of choice, with the choice of roommate, or living independently if you prefer that there are set meal times and that you get set meals. I call it the 3 a.m. burrito rule. I've heard it somewhere. I wish I could give credit to who that is. If you are in a place where you can't have a burrito at 3 a.m. when you want to, that is segregated, and it's like not your freedom and autonomy. There's no 3 a.m. burrito, then you're not probably in the community. You're probably in a segregated setting. We're not talking about when you don't have groceries. We're talking about when you do not have the freedom to choose what you want to eat at what time. And then we've got, like, if it's group employment, you're in a group doing things that all the group is doing. That's one kind of segregated setting. If you have the job in the community with the same pay as your peers, that would be in the community. So these are all great examples of a segregated versus in the community setting. And actually, I see separate camp here, but I think that one's actually been disproven recently. Like, we've been able to use self-determination funds because it's not a permanent situation. It is something that you're choosing in your own community. So be careful with some of these, but those are important pieces. The regional center does not approve your spending plan. We always like to say that we say things like, oh, the regional center has my spending plan and they have to approve it. They have to monitor it for sure, but they don't approve it. They can't let you use it on things that are not allowed. It's not the same as an approval. They're helping us follow the rules. They don't approve what services and supports are in your spending plan. Those things all go towards your goals, and they know that. And they don't approve how much funds you can allocate for each of your services and supports. That is something that you will decide how to do. What they do have the responsibility to do is a little different. They ask questions about specific items to make sure they are in the waiver and that they are allowed, right? That there are things that you can spend money on. They ask questions about whether you asked generic resources to pay first, right? Let's say you needed more speech therapy, but you went straight to self-determination instead of checking with private insurance and then Medi-Cal first. If you have the denials from those other two places, then you're talking about your self-determination program as a possible funding source for that. But you have to look at those generic resources first. They have the responsibility to ask questions about where you'll be receiving these services. They want to make sure that these things are in the community, that they're safe, that all those things are still in place. And they are going to ask how a service relates to your IPP goals if it's not clear to them. Some of those are going to be really clear, and they probably won't ask you things that are clear, but if they don't understand it, they have the responsibility to ask and to clarify. And then they also have the responsibility to ask you to change your spending plan to meet the requirements. They are helping us monitor this program, and they are an important piece of our team. It is really important that we work collaboratively on this. Tim, are there any questions in the chat that you want to stop for first? Have you been looking at that? Let's see here. Let's see. Let's see. All right, so does this spending plan have to be in a specific, all right, I don't know if our interpreter showed up. Gabby, I know that you're in here with us. Do you happen to know if, what was her last name? if our interpreter did arrive, Sylvia had someone for us. Yeah, we've got some participants asking for interpreters. You're not able to unmute. Can you, let me see if I can unmute you. Let's see here. I don't know if I can.
Okay,
You,
yes,
Tim?
I'm off of mute. I
Thank
was
you.
just trying to find out, Sylvia Hara, we're trying to find out where the interpreter is. So if you could give us a few minutes.
Well,
It's
sure.
through the
Thank you for trying.
It's through the Legacy Center. So I don't know if anyone on here is with the Legacy Center to
Okay, I'm
translate.
gonna answer some questions in Spanish here for, I don't know who the Legacy Center is. I'm so sorry.
If you want, I can help out. I speak Spanish.
I do as well.
Oh, okay.
I just can't do both at the same time. I'm not that good.
Okay.
La señora Cabrera está preguntando si esto solo está en inglés. No, íbamos a tener intérprete, pero la señora Gabriela nos está diciendo que no ha llegado todavía la señora de la Legacy Center y no sé dónde está, ella debe de estar aquí, pero para los que hablan español, eso fue parte del centro regional. Ellos lo organizaron para la intérprete y no ha llegado todavía. De esta parte no puedo ayudar, disculpe. All right, let me see here. We've got a couple of questions. Let me see if we can, does that work for you, Tim? Can we start taking some questions? Go ahead. Let's say we have one right here. Tim, I think you can unmute people, right? I can't. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Sammy. Hi, Tim. Good to see you again. So, yes, you mentioned about generic resources and accessing Medi-Cal and private insurance, so on. And I have a question. I've come across several families who asked me this question, and I don't have the answer for it. In the self-determination service description, it says that occupational therapy, speech therapy, behavioral therapy, psychology, all these therapies must be limited to 2 visits a month.
Yeah.
A lot of families need, at least minimum once a week or multiple times a week. And how do I explain this to them, why that is?
You mean the Medi-Cal coverage for those therapies?
No, self-determination. When you put that amount in self-determination spending plan, the service description specifically says that you cannot allocate more than 2 visits a month for these services. So I cannot explain anything beyond that point to any families. So most families,
I think that's a DDS question, actually, unless Gabby, do you have a response to that? Because that's above my pay grade. That's like how they created the program originally. It's a great question.
Okay, because I just need to explain more than, well, it's in the self-determination program description.
That may actually be the response, though, because if that's what the regulations state, that's what they are. I think what the challenge is then is to send notes to the ombudsman person and say, this isn't working for families, and continue to and have all of those families send those notes to her to make sure that they understand that this is not sufficient. And we need to look at how to modify this to make it work for families.
I see. If anybody knows, I'd
next.
love to know if how you are making it happen more than 2 times a month, then I can, help other families as well. Okay, thank you very much.
If we come across that answer, we'd be happy to post it.
Thank you.
Anytime. And we have Susan.
Susan has a question.
Hi.
I'm going to unmute her.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
So my question is, I have a client we already have the second PCP and spending plan. We submitted it to the regional center, and then they submitted a budget that is not balanced to our spending plan. So we went back and forth to it, and I just want to make sure that, isn't it that the budget that they of the should be matching our spending plan.
I'm sorry, you're cutting in and out a little bit. Can I repeat your question and you tell me if I got it?
Yeah,
Your client is submitting a spending plan that does not match their budget.
yes,
Okay, and the question is, shouldn't they be matching?
yes,
You could only go under. If you want to propose a spending plan that's less than your budget, you could do that. But proposing a spending plan that's over your budget's not going to be accepted. Is
but
that,
there's an unmet needs on an ABA.
okay,
So
then you would have to discuss the unmet need first. But
Huh?
that's a budget question. That's not the spending plan question, right? So the budget doesn't have enough money for the ABA.
That's right.
So the discussion there is, we need to have a discussion about unmet need. And once you have the discussion about the unmet needs, then you figure out how to add the money to the budget. And then that money has to be allocated for the things that you need.
okay, so if it's approved by, I mean, I know they don't approve it, but if everything has been discussed, then they should add that on their budget, right?
In theory, that seems reasonable, but I think there's a lot of missing information probably here. So I'd
Mhm.
hate to say, yes, that's right, and then not have missed some chunks of information. So if they've already had a conversation, they've already done their assessment for ABA, and they're waiting for something, you can always revisit that budget later and then and then have the spending plan with the things that are there, but then have items that are like a couple of dollars, right, to hold that spot, and then add those funds into the budget later.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Does that make sense? Hopefully that made sense.
Yes, we checked on the Medi-Cal and they already used the Medi-Cal. So I
Gotcha.
think, yeah, I think we will be getting that budget. Thank you
Great. And
very
actually,
much.
thank you so much. And actually, Talene actually mentioned that North LA requests the spending plan before they issue a budget. And that's an odd way to do it. And for me, they must have a reason for doing that. I'm not sure what it is, but I don't think that I've ever worked with someone. I work as an independent facilitator as well. And I have never successfully done a spending plan, like going back and forth, backwards and forwards that way. I think it would be very difficult. I would be able to give somebody a person-centered plan that says, these are the things we're hoping to be able to fund. Here are all the unmet needs. Here are the things we anticipate we're talking about in that budget process. But having the spending plan before that, especially in your first year, to me sounds like a difficult way to do it, but they must have a reason for wanting to do it that way, I suspect. Tim, did you have something to add
Marie
to
has a
that?
question in chat about a specific format about the spending plan.
Well, I'm going to show you actually this is what one of the financial management services needs. This is just one way to do this. So I gave it as an example, and maybe it will help answer some questions. Do you want to, we only have a couple more slides left. Can the people who have questions hold them for a couple of minutes and let us get through this to see if we address your questions? And then we'll keep Jordan in line and Talene in line next. Does that work? Super. All right. So one of the things that you're really going to have to be aware of when you're putting that spending plan together, and what the things that are missing from this is a financial management services point of view on a spending plan. As an independent facilitator myself, I always want the goal on this page and some explanation or narrative of why it's here, so that they can remember and not have to go back and forth between your person-centered plan, your spending plan, and like make sure they understand it. So this is asking just for the service or the support or the activity or the item. We're calling this person a community living coach. His name is Fred Flintstone. I know his name, so I'm putting it into this plan. I have my service code is 320. That's the community living supports code. I'm looking at the pricing per hour, how many units per month, how many annual units, what the cost is per unit, and then the unit is here again. I don't understand why. This is not the way I would do it. This is the way an FMS does. Now, the employer's burden, right, over here, this is really an important part that Tim and I were actually talking about before this. You need to know what your employer's burden is going to be, because if you're hiring someone directly, you have to budget for that in this area. The total cost per hour is in here, so that's what it's going to cost. Plus, you've got the paid sick leave, and you've got all these other, piece like here, cost of paid sick leave. Not sure? Ask your FMS, that financial management service, and hopefully you'll come next week when we're talking to a financial management service, so you can ask them, like, what do you do? What do you do for paid sick leave? And then what the annual cost is for that one line for Fred Flintstone. So that's really just one example of a way to do this. The question in the chat was, does it have to be in a certain way? No, if you're the one that I use for my families doesn't look just like this. It does have hourly rate, like how much it costs, the employer burden, all of these pieces, but it includes also the goal to make sure we understand how it's going to connect to the goal. That information's there as well. And then what I like to do is make sure it's clear to families how to do that, so then the math populates for them, so they don't have to worry about those pieces. But I don't know if this helps, but this is like the annual units. This basically just means this is 160 hours per month. So this is times 12, right? Cost per unit. This is how much, $21 an hour. The hour here, and then we've got the employer burden is, let's say you're paying $25 an hour, right? Then the employer burden is going to be higher. And then you may not be able to hire somebody for 19, 20 hours per year. Maybe you have to hire them for 1850. So you have to decide how you can use those funds to meet your needs. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. I'm not sure if there are any other questions here in the chat. Does anyone have a question about this? Like what you need to be able to put into that spending plan? Jordan, go ahead.
Okay, I have a couple questions. First off, can you go over again? We're talking about this part, then I'll ask you my other question. Explain employer burden again a little better? Is that the same? Is that the same? What does burden mean? You pay somebody, I'm going to pay you $22.50 an hour. What is burden? Are you talking about like workers' comp? Are you talking about workers' comp or sick leave or all these other things? Or what is that?
Whatever your financial management service charges you to per hour, right? Or for your plan to cover things like taxes, workers' compensation.
They have a flat rate. FMS is usually capped at a certain level. So that's just, you can say, okay, they're capped at whatever that level is. And then you just add that to your spending plan. And that would be your employer. That would be the same as a burden.
No, this is a separate charge that financial management services add to the hourly rate. So you're right. So officially, they probably shouldn't be able to do that, right? But like some of it's not what they're charging you to run the plan. It's the taxes that you have to pay for your employees. So if you have an employee who is earning $20-some an hour, you've got to pay the taxes for that person. Now, I don't know why they're all different. I think that's a really important question. It's not what we're here to talk about today, but those kinds of questions are really important. It's just that's not today's discussion. So the employer burden for this FMS is 12.5%. And then they also charge to make sure that you're paying, like accruing their sick leave. So you're paying for their sick leave, their taxes, their workers' compensation, those pieces. If you're talking about the chart that financial management services have, that they pay like $150, you pay $150 a month, that does not cover your employees' taxes or anything else. That is what the financial management service earns on that plan. And remember, that money is that's coming out of your plan this year. That's going to be paid by DDS in some magic way that every regional center has to figure out somehow. Okay, so that was your first question. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
I don't know if North Los Angeles has their own spending plan template, but with my regional center in Orange County, they have their own template, and most FMS has their own template also.
Mhm.
So in my situation, we needed to do 3 different spending plan with the same budget that I have. One
Yes,
for regional center, one for the FMS, and one for myself with 3 different templates.
absolutely. We just had the same issue myself with a family. I use my working document because it includes goals and the other ones didn't. Every regional center has their own different thing. So for those of you who are IFs working with multiple regional centers, you feel my pain. You know how hard it is to keep everyone straight, like which ones are which. And then the other is your FMS now is going to have their own template. And it's, so you get to do 3 of them. How fun is that? I think Jordan wanted to finish his question though. Go ahead, Jordan. And then Ariane, I think you can go next. Go ahead, Jordan.
Okay, yes, I'll ask I'll finish up on this one. So when you ask about taxes, if I'm paying somebody, well, minimum wage, if you're making minimum wage at say $15 an hour or $7.50 an hour, depending on where you're at, $15 an hour, that's obviously taxes are coming out of that minimum. You're not netting, grossing. The gross is 15. You net whatever all the taxes are, so you don't see that 15 in your pocket. I'm just trying to clear that up because you said something about, well, if you want to pay somebody 22 an hour, then you have to go down 19 or something. No, that's what they'll be. If you have the budget of 22 an hour, they'll be making probably 19, or am I right? They'll be making a little less.
Right,
It's not
right.
15.
So the money will come out of there. And that's, Jordan, you've got excellent points.
They missed the sick leave.
Mm-hmm.
They missed sick leave. If someone's sick, then it's coming out of their hourly rate. It wouldn't be a separate entity. You don't have a budget full of money in the corner for sick leave. You could say, okay, you took 2 weeks off this last week. I'm going to use your pay is going to go towards your hourly rate and go towards, sick leave.
I think, Jordan, we should have you with the FMSs next week to have them explain exactly why it is that there's an employer burden.
Okay. And the other thing I would ask him, and maybe you can answer this, or maybe you want to wait, whoever the FMS is how does the FMS get paid and then pay the consumer? If, like you want to, I don't know, you're going to use Uber rides. A lot of people need and they're spending rental, they take Uber. Or you're going to take dance class. How does the money come to the FMS before it comes to whatever service you're getting? So I'm hiring you as my IF, okay? I'm going to hire Reyes as my IF. You send me an invoice. I send it over to my IF. What happens next? If the IF pay you first? Do they go to regional center and get paid first? What is the cycle? If you don't get paid, I hear of, because I'm on the self-termination advisory board, there are a lot of people that regional center isn't paying, or we're not getting our paychecks in time. Staff isn't being paid on a timely manner. So is that coming because the independent facilitator is supposed to pay out of pocket first and then they bill regional center, where they say, okay, we got an invoice for something and we need to get this paid? Do you understand?
I'm not,
Question
I
on that,
think
really.
you might be mixing up FMS with IF. So
No, FMS. Like, for example, I have
I heard you
service.
say
I'm
IF
using you
multiple
as my
times.
IF.
Hold on.
You
hold
send
on
me
one
an
second.
invoice. You send me an invoice, say that I need to pay you because you worked a certain amount of hours.
Mhm.
I approve that invoice with my IF. Does my IF then say, okay, we're just automatically going to pay that to you? Or do they have to get the money first from regional center and then they pay you?
That's really a question for the financial management services because they do all of their programs differently. So, and it's not really
differently.
part.
It's not a standard?
No, there's nothing standard about them. It's like every single one is its own little red wagon and you have to hold the little red wagon that you're with.
So then the one that we meet with next week that
Yep.
people come to and talk to may not be the one they're going to be using in the future.
Correct.
So all the information they get, unfortunately, may not be what they're going to get when they go to
Really
their
depends. The ones who are coming next week for sure at this point are GT Independence of Aviana and Mainsol. Those 3 are confirmed. I'm still waiting on Acumen and a couple of others because we've had some changes lately. And so we're going to find out, and maybe Sylvia will have an update about contact people at certain new FMSs. That would be great. But
Thank
right
you.
now, those questions are really important for the financial management services panel next week.
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad you have them ready for next week. You're very prepared. Awesome. Tim, what were you going to say?
Jordan, my staff makes $20 an hour, but it's actually cost me $22. For example, because I am responsible at paying the workman's comp and etc. And my employees is not responsible at paying the workman comp and sick day.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
All right. Super. Okay, so Sylvia did some really hard work for your regional center, you guys, and you should really be grateful for this. The employee burden rate that's up here, for all these different all these different financial management services, they're listed here for you. And this is something that was in your board packet maybe a month ago. And you've got Acumen here, right? Let me get my little annotation spotlight thingy. You've got Acumen. Down here, we've got Aviana, Cambrian, GT Independence, and Mainsel. And I know you've had another one join recently, and one has left recently. So their percentages are here. I think Jordan's question about what those percentages are supposed to cover is a good question. I just don't have an answer for it, and I'd prefer not to make one up. So if we've got 22% right here for Cambrian, for every dollar you pay somebody, you're going to be spending 122 when you're working with Cambrian. Now, GT Independence has different rates for co-employer model versus the sole employer model. Those are kind of interesting distinctions as well. And so those are things to be thinking about when you are creating that spending plan. So I'm really just looking at this from a spending plan perspective right now. How much extra are you budgeting in for that employee burden rate? Okay. Ariane, did you still have a question? I saw your hand was up for a while, and I want to make sure I answer it if you have one. All right, let me check the chat quick before you. Okay, there's a really important question here. If the spending plan is less than your budget, will your budget get reduced next year? I think that's really, every regional center is different about that. Sylvia, do you know the answer to that one? Oh, you have to unmute her, Tim? Let me see if I can ask you to unmute. I don't know if I don't think I'm as powerful as Tim is today, everyone.
Hello, sorry, what was the question again?
The question was, well, actually I have two questions for you. One is the spending plan, if your spending plan is less than the budget, right? Let's say you spend $2,000 less than your budget. Do you lose those $2,000 at North LA Regional Center, or do they appear again next year?
So the funds don't roll over to the next budget year. However, at North LA, we assess need annually. So you're going to have an IPP annually to determine what is the consumer's current needs, and then that's how your budget is developed.
And actually, to piggyback on that, you also have vendor rate increases this year. So maybe some of and that's just the one time. I'm pretty sure we're not going to see that again for many, 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 many years, if ever. So just make sure you're communicating with your service coordinators about that budget, so that maybe some things have gone up in price this year because, everything has gone up in price. And make sure that you get that new vendor rate. I don't know if North LA is doing that automatically, or if everyone has to request it from their service coordinator, but some of the regional centers are just automatically providing a new budget certification tool with the increased rates. And it's been very, very helpful. I don't know if that's helpful to North LA, but it's been really great. Talene, do you have, can you
Kelly,
unmute
could we
yourself?
stop sharing screen?
Yes, of course. Thanks. Appreciate it, Tim.
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify what I was putting in the text in the chat, because I
Sure.
mentioned in the chat that the lady, and I apologize, didn't catch who was speaking earlier, was struggling with the spending plan and getting the budget to match the spending plan. I think the confusion might come from the fact that North LA requires looking at the spending plan before they issue the budget. And the intent is for them to look at the services, not the totals. So it
Okay.
makes it easier if the IF or the family turns in a spending plan without any totals in it. So you don't
Yes.
need to put in those numbers, just turn in what you're going to be spending the money on. So while they're working on drafting the budget, they can also look at and make sure that you're actually meeting the HCBS compliance and the waiver rules and all of that. So just wanted to clarify that. And
Thank
I
you
think
so much,
Sylvia,
Talene. That's really helpful because every regional center does things a little bit differently. I think we know, and that's a big and important difference. And
Sylvia,
there
does
was
that explain it right?
Well, and I wanted to say, so we don't require to provide you a budget tool. What happens is that the budget goes to accounting for certification. And while we're waiting for the budget to be certified, we do like to see that draft of a spending plan, or to start talking to the families. How are you using these funds in your spending plan? That way there's no surprises
Right.
when the spending plan is presented, and there's no delays on, oh, you're putting something that we don't feel is appropriate and we can move forward with transitioning into SDP.
And
That's the
Sylvia, I
reasoning.
think your reasoning is right on because you're trying to save time. I think the problem comes in that from a perception from the family side and from even the IFs, from the conversations I've heard, is that you are changing the budget based on what you think the spending plan would be after you see it. And it actually happened to me where you guys changed the budget after issuing us a budget. We gave you the spending plan to look at, and you guys actually rolled down our budget significantly for that client. So a lot of people are hesitant to give you that spending plan until the budget is negotiated. So the true path should be that the budget is based on what traditional services would have given, and regardless of what that spending plan looks like, because my spending plan might be half of the budget. It
Well, yeah.
shouldn't change what the budget is.
No, and it shouldn't. We definitely don't change it. I would be interested to connect
Yeah.
with you offline to see who this individual was, but we typically create the budget based on traditional needs and traditional service rates. And we do ask for the budget for the spending plan draft, but just for those purposes, it wouldn't, the budget should already be in accounting, being reviewed and certified, not to go back and say, oh, we're taking this because of the way you're using your funds in the spending plan. That's not the way it should be happening.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say that the intent and what's happening are not matching. The intent is realistic, I think, because it does save time.
And actually, Sylvia, since you're still unmuted, I love that. Does North LA have its own template that families are supposed to use?
We do have a template, and we're going to be uploading into our website. However, it's not a requirement. If the one that the consumer is using has the information that we need, then we will take it. We're not going to give them an extra step. But if there's an FMS that requires them to do a spending plan in their portal, that's very hard to read. We really need ours as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So if the spreadsheet or the spending plan that you receive from the family or the participant meets your needs, you're not going to ask them to put it into a third template.
Correct.
Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah.
All right, super.
Lori, do you want to introduce yourself? I have to give an advertisement to your local advisory committee is one of the most activity ones in the state. The chair of the local advisory committee is Lori Walker, and she really wants the program to succeed for everyone in your regional center. Lori, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Okay, yes, hi, I'm Lori Walker. I'm actually co-chair with Richard Deere, And yes, we're working really hard to make our local advisory committee productive, to make it easier to be a part of our program, to listen to people's needs or issues or complaints and trying to solve them. So we meet every couple of weeks with North LA based on the feedback we get from a variety of sources, from our support group to our RFP recipients to you name it. I've gone to other local advisory committee meetings. So we are working really hard trying to make this a great program. So thank you, Tim.
Lori, thank you so much. I'm so glad you could be here tonight. And thank you to the whole committee for creating this as an option for people to participate in, so they can get information about spending plans. I'd love to know if there are more questions. We're at the end of our slides, and so we did want to make sure that questions were addressed and answered. So let's see here. How do we access the template on the North LA County website? I think that Sylvia just responded to that, and it's not up there yet, but they will be putting it on their self-determination page, if I understood her correctly. Yes, I did. Good job, me. All right. Yes, and thank you to Lori and the whole committee for their hard work on the self-determination program at North LA. You guys should check out their committee-centered plan. They're doing some amazing work. And we're very excited at DBU to be helping them put those things into place for North LA. Ariane, go ahead. Oh, wait, unmute her, please. Thank you, Fred.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So some of my questions, I'm trying to keep it focused to the topic, which is spending plan. But,
Right.
bear with me because sometimes I don't know if my question really fits that definition. So,
No problem.
so I guess some of my generic questions are kind of based on, my specific situation with my son. In theory, like, let's say going back to creating the spending plan, one thing that I've noticed with our particular FMS is that we didn't anticipate in our spending plan overtime.
Okay.
And the FMS, I think, had a generic contract agreement, saying that they wouldn't pay overtime, which in California, you don't really have that option. You're required to pay that.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering, we just started second year, and we've ran into some hiccups that I know that our local regional center is still trying to rectify. But can you give any guidance in terms of, let's say, when there's a discrepancy from what the spending plan was done to what the FMS has done, and how it's going to be rectified? Because right now, I guess what my concern is that, let's say we're fully into year 2 and we're getting our monthly budget reports, and I have a feeling that the FMS is not properly adhering to the spending plan. They're following the overall budget, but they're not looking at those line items that such and such service code should only be for so much, et cetera. And they're just kind of, if it comes in, they'll pay it. So, which again, it's,
Well, at least they're paying stuff.
yeah, exactly. On one hand, but see, in year
Sorry.
1, it wasn't
That's a
so
hard
much
one.
an issue as much as it might be for year 2 or vice versa. So I don't, and rather than getting into specifics, I kind of just want to know if
It's a
that's an
general
issue.
question.
Yeah,
And I appreciate you keeping it general so that it's not like, this is what's going on with my child.
exactly.
That's
Yes.
never good for training, is it?
Yeah.
So thanks for that. I think that's a really important question. And I think if the FMS is not doing what your spending plan says it should be doing, I really think that's an ombudsperson question. Does anybody else have a feeling on that? Like the talking with the state? Because I think it's bigger than just your regional center. If your FMS is not doing, like, not following the service code numbers and not making sure that the amounts that are at the end, like the regional center already gave them their purchase of service with those codes. So if they're not if I'm understanding you correctly, and they're not following those codes, then you need to make sure that somebody who has a little more power than the rest of us do can address that. Did anybody at North LA want to respond to that? I mean, do you have more advice on that one? Because I would go to the ombudsman person for one of my clients. That's where I would go first. Sylvia or Gabby? Do you still have to be unmuted again? Tim, you're so powerful. Can you please pretend that they're still here and unmute them again? Maybe he was afraid that you were gonna like say something inappropriate and then he muted you again. Sorry.
Thanks, Tim. So yes, that would sound like an ombudsperson, but also as a regional center, we can talk to your service coordinator about the issues that you're experiencing, and we can advocate since they are a vendor of North LA.
And actually, there's some follow-up questions in the chat coming in. Oh, okay, so we got a couple of questions. The ombudsman person is the person at DDS. It's a position of the person who is like overseeing the management and implementation. Not so much like, let's make new rules, but like, are FMSs following the rules? Are IFs following the rules? Are people safe? Are we doing the things we're supposed to be? Like, you're overseeing person. So that was one of the questions. And I think Deborah has a really important question. Can't you ask them to move funds? Yes, you can ask them to move funds. Remember, you can, without it, even having an IPP, you can move 10% of your total budget without an IPP. Now that is a different question, I think, than what Ariane was asking. If I understood her correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong. What I understood her to say is that they had overtime in a category and the FMS was not necessarily using that code to pay those, like they're just paying things out without verifying that there are funds in that code, but it's still getting paid out anyway. So it sounds kind of messy to me. And I don't
Yeah, it
think
wasn't,
you know?
and it wasn't related to the overtime.
Okay.
That became, well, that was an initial issue, but then it's got rectified. But the
Okay.
problem is it going forward is, yeah, we created spending plan for year 2, for example.
Mhm.
And, you know, we're already at a point that I'm looking and the service code numbers aren't matching up.
And
You
it
know.
may be like when I have a family issue with that, I just call my FMS and have them like put in a ticket so that they can fix it. If
Yeah,
it's that easy, they can maybe fix it there. If you've already tried that, then I'd go up to the ombudsman person. And then Talene, actually, thank you so much, Talene. We're gonna have her come every week. And then she's got the ombudsman person link right in the chat for you. What was that, Tim?
You seriously need to factor in overtime in your budget. I
Mhm.
have a line item for overtime, and I highly recommend you have factor in the overtime, because how will you know if you are under budget or over budget?
It's true.
FMS should be paying overtime if it's in your spending plan.
That's a great way to rectify the situation though too, Ariane, if you just make a separate line item for that. That might, and Tim is an expert on complicated lives and complicated spending plans. So you may want to use his wisdom there. Miriam, go ahead. And after Tim lets you talk.
Hi, I have a question about, I posted in the chat, but I don't know. So
I can't see it right now. So go ahead and ask it again. Thank
Yes.
you. Yeah.
So the sick time is mandatory in the spending plan. My question is, can the sick time be used as paid time off, vacation time? Or can any of the hours be used as vacation times? Is that allowed if I wanted to be that way? How does it work?
Tim, you had an answer. Go ahead. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say for the answer, but I was gonna wait until Tim was done.
For me, I don't ask my employees how they are using their sick time. In California, you have to give your employees at least 24 hours of sick time.
That seems reasonable, like it's just not asking if there's, you know, I sometimes have to take a mental health day. Yeah, like I want to get away from Tim too, right? Just, Tim is a dear friend. He can take it. All right, so can I use sick times for vacation? Well, I mean, if you only have 24 hours, you're probably not going far. But if you use Tim's philosophy of you don't like, you use your sick time. Tim, do your staff ever take sick time like 5 weeks from now? Do they plan it that far ahead, or is it not so close? No, not that far out. It's not like a planned holiday. All right, and then Jordan, let's see, go ahead, Jordan. Tim might have to unmute you.
Hey, two quick things. One is about the sick time. Yes, this field unfortunately does not allow for sick time since there's really no money being made as a consumer or client coming in. They know that, sick time is kind of a hard thing to do, especially, you can budget, like you said, for, some days off. If you want to use some of your weekly hours for days off, you want to do that. If you have, multiple staff, they need a day off and you're say with your family, or you're doing something, say for Thanksgiving with other people, and you want to give them that Thanksgiving off, that could be a way that I've been told that you can work around some of the holiday pay budget in there, but it's very hard to do sick pay because we're not a corporation that can offer sick pay. I'm an entity of one, so it's very hard for me to say I can give you, I can budget for 2 weeks of sick pay or 5 days of sick pay. How can I budget for that? I could, but that remedial center, which should then DDS should automatically put into your spending plan. Everybody should have 1 week worth of sick pay, and it should be standard.
Actually, I think that might not be accurate. Talene, did you want to respond?
Yeah, let me help with this one. So of course, if you want to add sick time to your plan, you have to talk to your FMS about what they offer. Each of the FMSs, based on the states that they're in and what states they work in, have different laws that they are responsible for. So sometimes when there are differences between the FMSs in these little nuances, right, it's because of where they are located and what they're required to offer, as well as how big their company is. If their company has more or less than 50 people, there are different requirements. So that said, and that set aside, I just want to clarify that California law requires 1 hour of sick time for every 30 hours worked, hence that 3.33%. The problem is how you calculate it. Most people add 3.33% to the rate. That is not how it's calculated. You have to take the total hours that somebody works, how many hours they would be working. So let's say a 40-hour work week would allow for an additional 1 hour and 1.33 hours of, or so I'm sorry, 1.03 something calculated hours of sick time, right? So if they work 30, let me make round numbers. They work 30 hours in a week, they get 1 hour of sick time at the same rate that they have been paid otherwise. So when they take their sick time, they have banked hours that they have that they can utilize. So it's use or lose. If they don't use it and they leave, they're not working for you any longer, they can't go back and claim those. But if they work 30 hours normally, and they did call out sick for one shift of 8 hours, and they have 8 hours banked, they could call a full day sick time or a half day, depending on what they have available to them.
Per year, you said, right?
It's 1 hour per 30 hours worked.
And it lasts for a calendar for 365 days.
No, it has nothing to do with 365 days.
Oh.
What I'm trying to say is that
No, I was thinking, how long does that last for them? I mean, can they say, I accumulated a year's worth of sick time, so I'm going to take off the next week. I'm going to be sick for the next week. You're saying because they can't use it. So
how you use it is dependent on your FMS's rules. And you can use sick time to go to the doctor too. So if you
Yep.
take a morning off to go to the doctor, you can take a 2 or a 4 hour, 2, 3, 4 hour
I
block of
believe they
time.
also made it possible to take it for your, if you have to go to your child's IEP
Correct.
recently. Yeah.
Child's IEP, well, yes, child's IEP, and also if you have any kind of a child or an elder that is in your care and you have to take time off for their medical
Absolutely.
needs, that counts too.
Yep.
But Jordan, for the calculation, it's not per year. All I was saying is that if the individual no longer works for you, they can't claim those hours. That
If
would
they
be the end.
separate from service, if they no longer work.
No, I understand that, but if they've been working for you for 2, can they, you said 1 hour for every 30 hours you work of sick time, but if
Mhm.
they've been working for you, if you're lucky enough to have someone who's been there for 6 years or 10 years, is that calculated over 10 years? And they could just
Good.
say, you know what, I'm gonna be sick, I'm gonna be, and most
That's
people are
actually
never
a
really
good
sick.
question.
I'm gonna
That's
take
a
off
good
the next 6
question.
weeks
But
because I'm
again,
using
it
sick
goes,
pay to go on a, you know?
it goes back to your FMS. You need to talk to your FMS on what rules they have to follow.
Right.
It would be
Okay.
different for every one of them.
It's a
Helene,
problem.
thank you so much for a clarification and all those answers. All right, so what other
One more thing
questions?
I wanted to say before I
What-
get muted
yes,
is that I
what's
wanted
that?
to make a comment in support of Tim, that he's having a meeting, that when we talk about difference in FMSs, there's also difference in how regional centers do the spending plan. According to what Tim said just a few days ago, is regional center OC, which I heard a lot of complaints about, is not allowing him to go to the DVU conference. They're not gonna put it in his spending plan. They cannot budget for that or something to do with his spending plan. So maybe he wants to explain, when we need to go to his regional center advisory meeting and complain that he can't get the $75.
Tim, did you want to respond to that? I'm going to read through the chat while you organize that.
There is a question about regional center from Talene, and I'm not sure what she meant.
Getting on Tim.
Revisions to the spending plan? I can guess, and I'd love to try. So let's say you have a spending plan. Talene, tell me if I'm not accurate, and then Tim, I'll stop when you're ready for me. You have to change something mid-year. You have to, when you have to revise that spending plan, how does North LA have that process in place, and do they have like steps to do that? Talene, is that your question? All right, yes.
Okay.
Sylvia, do you have an answer for that one? Because
Yeah.
that's above my pay grade.
So we would need a revised spending plan to process that change. And even though statute says that the less than 10% can be moved within the same category, there is something internally that all regional centers have to do in order for that FMS agency to be paid. So for those, even for those small changes, we do need a revised spending plan to make the change, unfortunately.
But we don't have to call an entire IPP. We just have to have that new
Yes,
spending plan.
correct.
Okay.
Whoa.
Talene, so
It is.
much. Every RC is different. There was one question about whether parents could be paid personal assistance of adult offspring, and yes, they can. Whether or not they are conserved individuals does not matter. They can be. There's a whole list of answers to that particular question. Where is that answer? Tim, you were
I
going
was
to
writing.
answer.
I'm going to the conference because I work for Disability Voices United, but many people from my regional center can't get the conference paid for from Orange County because DVU is not vendor in Orange County.
So in order for them to cover the conference, they have to be vendored in Orange County? That's an odd.
How come they're not vendored? Anybody know why they're not vendored? Who on?
Well, they don't need to be in order to be in the self-determination program. I mean, that's the key there. It's not really about whether or not they're vendored. If they're not accepting a what is it called? Courtesy
Right.
vendorization, the question's really different. The question is, why aren't they, like, if that's in somebody's goal and it's on their spending plan, they're not allowing someone to, if I'm understanding correctly, and Tim, you love to correct me when I'm wrong, so you go for it. if you don't have to be vendored to be doing that, you just have to have the person, the organization that is, like first it has to be a goal, service has to meet the goal. And if it doesn't address the goal, you shouldn't have it in your spending plan anyway. But regional center doesn't get to decide because they're not vendored with that particular regional center that they can't be in your spending plan. That's not.
Yeah, they can, if you're not a vendor, what I know as being former chair of mine, and maybe I'm wrong, if you're not a vendor service, then they can't pay you for that service. So if 24 Hour Fitness, good example, does not want to be a vendor service, and you need workout and you have a staff and everybody in place to go to the gym, they're not a vendor service, they're not going to get paid. So in his case, DVU, Disability Voice United, is not, for whatever reason, they're not allowing, Orange County is not using him as a vendor service, NLA is. So when I put in my spending plan to pay for the $75 for the conference, they'll send the bill to, we'll figure that out next week, but somehow the bill will get paid through my spending plan in Orange County. Sorry, we're not a vendor service. We don't recognize you. So we're not going to pay for it. It has to be only vendor services get paid. I can't go to 24 Hour Fitness because they're not going to be a vendor service. They don't want to be vendored. So that's
Well, they're talking about two separate things here. So, okay, go ahead, Tim.
The local advisory committee is coming with a plan. Let's move on with the training.
Perfect. Well, we've got a couple of minutes left. We've got Ariane with a question. Go ahead, Ariane.
Hi, so actually Talene and then the North Los Angeles did a good thing of almost kind of confirming what I was trying to say. So let's say, for example, the spending plan has to be changed and they mentioned that there was the process. Now here's the kicker. What if the FMS, came to us at one point and said, hey, spending plan needs to be changed, revise your spending plan, which we did. But then the FMS realized their numbers were incorrect because they forgot to account something. That's the situation that I'm talking about, where what happened in year one, which I think might have a feeling will happen in year two. And again, I gave the example of sick time, I think, or overtime, but really that's not one of the only reasons. But there's another issue in terms of, I can only assume where we are in our budget if the FMS is keeping accurate, and gatekeeping in a sense. Hey, you don't have any more money, you can't fund for this budget. And that was one of the problems we're dealing with year one that still hasn't been resolved. There's one vendor left to pay that unfortunately hasn't had their invoice paid, because even though I approved the spending plan change, the money is still not accurately reflecting what the budget was. And in fact, the budget, the spending plan somehow went over the budget. And again, this is all based on the FMS, So that's the question I want to know is, let's say, are we going to be responsible for that money? I mean, this is where I want to know the consumer versus the regional center, who's going to be responsible. Because as of right now, that vendor hasn't been paid. We haven't been using them anymore. They've stopped their services as of June, so it's not a big issue. But let's say we want to go back to them and we can't because they're going to bring up that issue. So I hope that kind of clarifies.
You asked me to unmute, so I'm guessing you want me to try to answer that, right?
Well, I think that she said Talene, so I'm going to let you go.
So
Yeah.
First of all, Ariane, that happens more often than anybody would like to admit. You're not alone in that battle. And that's why I put in the chat, I never let the FMS change even $1 on the spending plan, even though the law says that they can. Never, ever. We keep control, myself and my clients keep control of that spending plan, and that is our responsibility. That's the responsibility piece of self-determination. So it's
She's
really
mentioned
important.
2 of the principles of self-determination in one sentence, guys, right there.
So I always make sure that every month we review. It depends on the client. So sometimes we do it monthly, sometimes they do it monthly. I check in with them either quarterly or semi-annually, depending on the volatility of the spending plan. But 2 things you should know. Number 1, you have the right to change the spending plan in arrears. So you can pull that spending plan out, see what money is left in any other category, move it into the category that you need and submit it to the regional center, let them update it and submit it to the FMS so that that individual can get paid. We do not want to upset any of our vendors out in the community. Otherwise, this program will fail in the long run.
Absolutely.
If every one of us literally had these payables around around town, the rest of us won't be able to use those resources. So we've
That's right.
got to get our vendors paid. That has to be an important piece of this. Second thing is that, so that's one thing. If you went completely over and it is the responsibility, and you can prove that it was the responsibility of the FMS who made the change without your knowledge, then I would definitely work with your service coordinator, because remember, the FMS is the vendor of the regional center. Regional center is there to back you up and to protect you. So if something went wrong with how they're doing their job, and that was the reason why this went askew, I would definitely go through the regional center, and Sylvia Hara is a good place to start, I think, with the service coordinator to figure out how to address those changes. Sorry, not to put you on the spot, but
For Sylvia.
she's one of the few people I trust in SDP. So I will put that out there. But
Oh, that's nice.
if you were to go out there and go to your regional center and ask for support in getting this done, I wouldn't let it go just because you're not using that vendor anymore, because you are leaving a bad mark for the future, and you may want to use them again in the future too.
Excellent.
I did it once with one of my clients. Honestly, we went to the FMS, and we had them tell me I had $1.96 in this pot, I had $14.98 in another, and we put all the money where we needed it and paid off the last vendor. So it is possible to do.
Excellent. Ariane, do you still have a question, or did that respond to your concern? Maybe you're muted again.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I couldn't answer. Yeah, so going forward, what you're saying is that we should still be keeping track of the how the spending plan. But at the same time, that means that, let's say, majority of our budget or a big part of it goes to an hourly paid employee. That's going to be a little hard to do, because you know what I mean? Well, I guess not necessarily, but yeah, but you're saying in general,
passionate about that.
we shouldn't go to the FMS is what you're saying. So for
No.
year two, if we're
You
at there right now, go
You pay
straight to-
attention, your responsibility, you make sure that all the money is where it needs to be.
And I think that needs to be kind of communicated through the ranks to all of us clients that, because I think I was under the impression FMS's job was to
Pay
watch that.
attention.
Yeah, and not that we
No one
weren't
cares
either,
about
because we're
your
still
plan.
getting- Yeah,
Nobody
'cause we're
cares about your plan, your loved one, your anything the way you care. And if something gets screwed up in your program, the one person who's going to make sure that that's going to work out is you. That's
Yeah.
that freedom, responsibility, control, choice, all the stuff of self-determination, as much as it's extra work, right? We know that. Man, this program is amazing when it works well. It's life-changing when it works well.
And that's how I'm just, again, going back to looking at this
we're
is
all
a year
learning.
one, learning
all
through year
learning,
two.
And year
Exactly.
2 is going to be even better. It's going to
Yeah.
be even better in year 3 and year 74. It's going to be better each year. I will not be there for 74, but it's going to work out.
Got it.
Ladies and gentlemen, and all my friends, thank you so much for making time to be here tonight. It was great to see you. I hope this was helpful. Hopefully you got some tidbits or at least some ideas. I hope this was a good use of your time. Please let us know if you have additional questions going forward. Go to Lori Walker's and the local volunteer advisory committee meeting next time. Listen in, see what they're doing. They're doing some great work at North LA for all of you. Have a great night,
This
everybody.
Thursday.
On Thursday this week. Perfect. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. I think Tim's going to hang up on all of us.
Think about it as your checkbook. I know month to month what my staff got paid for minute by minute. I know exactly what I spent.
Yeah. Very good. It's perfect. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a great night.